So actually, that doesn't
They do
make
it in
sense.
sports.
It doesn't make sense.
You know, they have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up this way, she's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you gonna do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. You know, they put on an ounce, quarter an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy, but they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And, but I watched this morning. There was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing? What are they doing? But your country's not too big on that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very important form of protection.
And as you can see, most of my cabins are women, so,
That's impressive.
yeah.
And that's why you
And
run.
they're not DEI hires or anything. They're just great at what they do. Right?
That's right. This is very impressive.
Yeah,
This is a first. We've had women, but we've never had three of them right here.
4 and 3 men.
Look at what we have. You guys feel a little bit mistreated? I like it. We've been advanced in that regard too. We have Pam, who's been so
Yes,
fantastic.
and Christy.
Christy, and the most powerful woman they say.
I know, exactly. They're all afraid.
Susie Wells. Oh, stuff. Most powerful woman in the world, according to magazines. What do I know? But I think she probably is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she probably is.
Congratulations.
And you know, Stephen, who's done such a great job.
Yes.
We have great
It's
people,
very famous too.
but we love working with him. He really lets them have it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no games.
No. Very good.
He knows. Do you have any questions, please? Go, let's not start with CNN because they're just so
Mr. President.
wrong. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You repeatedly mentioned last night that Russia's attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And had you given Putin a deadline
Yeah.
to actually move towards a ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is, we had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged, it wasn't allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel, but I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He would never, and I told him, don't do it. You're not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do was lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you would have never had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. And I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone and the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do it. They lose 2,500 young people a week, think on average. Now they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000. We don't care. It's like whatever it is. They're not from your country. They're not from mine. But I want to stop it. 2,500. It's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look. I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles. You know, he's against. Listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war. Right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud. And they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But it's something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, largely destroyed. They have the spires, the beautiful spires that go up. They say that we're the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead because of three people. I would say three people. Let's say Putin, number one, but let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number two, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Last question, sir. Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
The good relation with President Bukele, the best guarantee that this time we won't terminate the temporary.
I have a great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young. And I was impressed. I said, look here, this guy is, in fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager.
I don't know if that's good or bad, Mr. President.
He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support the extension for nationals of El Salvador under?
I support him.
Do you plan to ask him?
How important is it for you to send?
Go ahead, Lisa. Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CBS.
Thank you, President Trump. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly
Which one is that?
deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President Bukele?
You are doing a great job.
Thank you, President.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN and they always ask it with a slant because they're totally slanting because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador who again is a member of MS-13, which is, I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world. And I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
any
Court's
help to get him
asking
back?
to,
And
Is that-
what was the
is
ruling
that your
in the
position?
Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it per the court can only be directed to him.
I asked
Se lo
President
liberaría al
Bukele, what is
presidente
your, can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to not suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
How
here.
can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or whether, of course, I'm not gonna do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
so you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world to the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world, and that's not going to be bad.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal,
Yeah,
released into
I
our
mean, there's a
They would
fascination.
love it.
Yeah.
They're sick, these are sick people. Mark, did you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin, except for Venezuela that wasn't refusing to take people back or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And
How
they
long
said
do we
that-
have to answer this question from you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that?
Well, it's a legal.
Why do you
dispute,
go
so I just wanted to be
over and over?
honest.
And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't be smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous, not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they're this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, "Sir, I've never seen anybody get that that was the highest mark." I hope you're happy with that. Although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I noticed there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, "Sir, would you like to take a cognitive test?" I said, "Did Biden take one?" "No." "Did anybody take one?" "No, not too many people took them." I said, what about Obama? Did he take one?" "No, he didn't take one either." I said, "Let me be the only one to take one." But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. and the doctors who are total professionals. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg, and we spent a lot of time with him. I mean, great with his mother, and it was really a very good thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for 5-6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical and it came out perfecto, so that's good. She's got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be open if you wouldn't be built?
I'd do something, we'd help them out, yeah, we help them. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam, I don't know what the laws are, we always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
How essential is it for you guys to be locking up these prisoners? And do you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on trying to end that?
Well, I do. I think everybody has to. The president said it better than anybody. He said, you know, you have liberty and you have liberty, but to have liberty, you're gonna, not everybody is gonna be good. And you know, some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged, they're bad.
Why do you think?
And you have to take them, if you're gonna have a country, you're gonna have to take those people out. And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote, but I did better with Hispanic people than they did, because they always use Hispanic. I did better. You people love me. So I saw my poll numbers in your country up through the roof, right? 91%. Some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat. You know, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. You know, I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no war we had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. The Afghanistan, not withdrawing, because I wouldn't have been, you know, I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing, a problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. You know, if you look at the numbers are incredible, actually. Stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Mr. President, thank you so much. You scored another major investment this morning. NVIDIA pledged to build its AI supercomputer, the first time ever, right here in the United States.
Thank you. Now that's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across the country?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear, because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world, between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest. And the other biggest we already have coming in and spending $300 billion, as you know, they announced 2 weeks ago. But NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs, as I say, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship. The press actually hit me. I said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God? So I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my fifth most favorite word because they get you on anything. But no, that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world, modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars. Not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people, they're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Thank you very
Do you
much.
think
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack, and do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce them?
Well, I already have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world, goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that all about? And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it and Biden approved it. Question?
On tariffs.
No, not you. Not you.
Yesterday, semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
What?
Semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals, we're gonna do, we don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's very simple. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
Do you have a percentage in mind and a timeline?
I have a timeline, not too distant future. We're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced, like a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have $1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion with some of these guys. I didn't know what the hell they were doing.
No teníamos nada comparable. Así que ahora tenemos las mayores inversiones que hayamos registrado después de solo 2 meses. Y esto va a continuar a niveles sin precedentes. Y hasta los mercados bursátiles lo están reflejando. Bueno, mucha gente no lo veía de esta manera. Hemos tenido el mayor repunte bursátil en la historia. Sí, hay gente que no entendía el poder de nuestra economía, de la economía de nuestro país. ¿Quieres decir algo al respecto, Jerry? Sí, durante 40 años estuvimos perdiendo capacidad manufacturera, vimos un estancamiento en los salarios, tuvimos problemas con la industria farmacéutica, en la producción de medicamentos infantiles, antibióticos, los medicamentos necesarios en casos de una guerra. El presidente quiere cambiar esto. Sí, esto causa cierta perturbación en los mercados, pero a la larga será un resultado positivo. Vamos a reinvertir y revitalizar la base industrial del país. Y los trabajadores automotrices y los distintos sindicatos nos han estado apoyando, algo que no se había dado con nuestro partido. Los demócratas han perdido terreno por sus políticas. Ellos luchan por políticas que solo son populares en el 5% de la población. Pero si usted ve, por ejemplo, hoy tenemos un equipo excelente de Ohio, los campeones, nos visitarán esta tarde. Si quiere estar un rato más con nosotros. Bueno, va a haber atletas impresionantes. Estos son atletas muy grandes, muy fornidos, pero es un gran honor recibirlos en la Casa Blanca como campeones. Así que le invito a que se quede con nosotros. Usted dijo ayer que iba a tomar una decisión sobre Irán en corto plazo. ¿Qué significa eso? ¿Un ataque a Irán? Irán quiere llegar a un acuerdo con nosotros, pero no saben cómo hacerlo. El sábado tuvimos una reunión con ellos. Tenemos otra reunión prevista el sábado que viene. Dije, es una pausa muy larga. Creo que están tratando de ganar tiempo. Pero Irán tiene que renunciar a la idea de desarrollar un arma nuclear. No puede ser. No se puede seguir desarrollando armas nucleares. Creo que están tratando de ganar tiempo porque se han acostumbrado a lidiar con gente estúpida en nuestro país. Nunca hubiéramos tenido el ataque del 7 de octubre perpetrado por Hamas porque Irán estaba en la quiebra. Yo quiero que Irán sea una nación rica y próspera. La única cosa que pedimos es muy sencilla. No al desarrollo de un arma nuclear, pero tienen que actuar rápidamente porque están muy cerca de ello. Si tuviéramos que actuar de manera más rigurosa, habrá que hacerlo. No solo por nosotros, sino por el mundo. Esta gente radicalizada que no puede tener un arma nuclear. Potencialmente un ataque a instalaciones nucleares de Irán. Usted hablaba de deportar a El Salvador a potencialmente ciudadanos estadounidenses que hayan cometido crímenes. Si son criminales que golpean a ancianas con un bate de béisbol en la cabeza, si violan a una mujer de 87 años en Coney Island, sí, son tan malos como cualquier otro malhechor. No es una categoría especial. Porque podemos lograr resultados trabajando con el presidente gastando menos dinero. Nosotros hemos tenido una gran cantidad de prisiones, algunas de ellas cárceles privadas. Él está haciendo un muy buen trabajo en este sentido. Pero si estamos hablando de criminales, yo no tengo problema con eso. Estamos estudiando las leyes en este momento, Pablo está haciendo. Yo estoy hablando de gente terrible, criminales ultraviolentos. Y cuando escuché de esto, hace años, cuando escuché que este tipo tenía una política de fronteras abiertas, dije, los criminales de todo el mundo los van a enviar a nuestro país, y fue lo que ocurrió. En el Congo vaciaron las cárceles, en Venezuela vaciaron las cárceles. ¿Y qué pasó? Bueno, ahora Venezuela tiene otros países. ¿Cuál es el otro problema que tienen? Bueno, se quedaron sin dinero porque les trancamos el mercado petrolero. Saben qué es lo que tienen que hacer. Hemos hablado con ellos, saben qué es lo que tienen que hacer, pero no tienen dinero. Venezuela está sin dinero. Irán se está quedando sin dinero. Cuando era así, se portaba muy bien. Y luego Biden eliminó los aranceles secundarios. Y le dijimos a China, no pueden comprarle petróleo a Irán. Eso se lo dijimos al presidente Xi. Si ustedes hacen eso, no queremos que sigan haciendo negocios con Estados Unidos. Y los buques cisterna se retiraron de inmediato. Quisiera continuar conversando con Irán. ¿Piensa que están siendo productivos? Creo que Irán puede ser un gran país siempre y cuando no desarrollen armamento nuclear. Ayer usted mencionaba algunas excepciones específicas para ciertos productos a corto plazo. Algunas empresas, por ejemplo, están cambiando, están produciendo autopartes que tienen que hacerlas en Estados Unidos, las están haciendo en Canadá o México, pero necesitan tiempo. Mire, yo soy una persona muy flexible. No es que cambie de parecer, soy flexible. Bueno, a veces si uno se enfrenta a una pared, tiene que buscar la manera de pasar por los lados, por arriba o por debajo, pero recientemente hablaba con Tim Cook sobre esto. Yo no le quiero hacer daño a nadie, pero el resultado final será llegar a una posición de grandeza para nuestro país. Somos la mayor superpotencia económica mundial y podemos afianzarnos si actuamos inteligentemente. Si no, le haremos un gran daño a nuestro país. Durante los años de Biden, billones de dólares en comercio se fueron a China y él lo permitió. No podemos seguir tolerando eso. Yo no culpo al presidente Xi. Me cae bien, yo le caigo bien. ¿Alguna actualización sobre las conversaciones con China? Miren, yo no culpo a China, yo no culpo a Vietnam. Hoy hubo una reunión maravillosa. Están tratando de decir, bueno, ¿cómo podemos invocar a Estados Unidos? Para eso se creó la Unión Europea. Ese era el objetivo. En la OTAN no estaban pagando sus cuentas. Pero logramos un aporte de casi 600.000 millones de dólares para la OTAN, porque solo 8 de 28 naciones estaban pagando sus cuotas. Y les dijimos, bueno, si no pagan, no los vamos a proteger. El secretario general lo decía, no podíamos conseguir que pagaran sus contribuciones porque Estados Unidos estaba pagando por todos. Bueno, nos estaban perjudicando en eso, en el comercio, pero van a tener que conversar y lo están tratando de hacer. Pero la Unión Europea se ha aprovechado terriblemente de nosotros. No compran nuestros productos agropecuarios o vehículos. Nosotros tenemos millones de sus vehículos. BMWs, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz. En Múnich no se ven vehículos Chevrolet. Yo se lo pregunté a Angela Merkel. Tenían una infiltración de millones de personas, inmigrantes ilegales en Alemania. Ella lo legalizó. Le dije, ¿cuántos Chevrolet hay en Múnich o en Frankfurt? Ninguno, Donald, le dijo. Tiene razón, pero nosotros tenemos millones y millones de vehículos europeos. Eso ha quedado atrás. Bueno, muchas gracias a todos.